Happy Devil's Tuesday. It is At the Point. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Bruce Zeman, NHL analyst extraordinaire, streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios inside the bunker in the undisclosed location, beautiful New Jersey, and somewhere off the beach in Delaware. Yeah, that's where he's at, Bruce Zeman. Bruce, has allergy season made its way down to Delaware? Because I'm just going crazy with...
Yeah, it absolutely has. The entire area is covered with pollen. It's one of the few things that I'm not crazy about living here is there is pollen everywhere. Cars, people, on your house. It's not my favorite time of year.
I know. I mean, once down in D.C., it's cherry blossom season. That's when, you're starting to feel it. And, boy, the respiratory issues I've been having the last, 3 or 4 days, it's just, ugh. It sounds like I'm sick, but I'm not. And it's just kind of weird. It's like I want to go back to winter, just absolute winter, where there's none of that. And you forget.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the other thing that I'm not a big fan of is insects. And down here, as we're kind of at the beginning of the South, it's certainly have those as well.
Yeah, insects, especially those gnats.
Ugh.
Yeah. Sometimes, when it's a muggy day and you get these gnats around and you're just like, with your hand, or mosquitoes. They're kind of and bees. I don't like bees.
Yeah, mosquitoes are bad here.
The only thing I like about bees is they make honey. But anyway, let's talk about the NHL playoff race, because wild card spots in each conference, there's only 2. Total of 4. Some teams are on the bubble. Some teams mathematically are still alive, but really have no chance to get a wild card spot. So we're going to pick the 2 wild card spots that we think would clinch in each conference. And we'll start off with the Eastern Conference, Bruce, because right now it just seems like, at least in the Atlantic and the Metropolitan Division, it seems like it's shaping up those teams earning the top 3. But the wild card spots, there's a lot of teams fighting for positioning on that.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And what's interesting is if you take a look at the wild card race right now, you've got a whole bunch of teams within striking distance of the second wild card spot. Right now, you've got the Ottawa Senators in the first playoff spot, 39, 28, and 6 with 84 points. And then right now, the Montreal Canadiens in the second spot at 34, 30, and 9. They've got 77 points. They're tied with the Rangers, 35, 32, and 7. They've also got 77 points, but the Canadiens are above them. But check this out, Sam. You've got, within striking distance, you've got Columbus with 75 points, Detroit with 74, the Islanders with 74, and then kind of on the outside looking in, at least right now, you've got Pittsburgh with 71, Philadelphia with 71, and if you really go back a few points, you've got the Bruins with 69, and that's probably as low as we're going to go. The Sabres are last with 68 points, but you've still got, some of these teams still have 7 or 8 games left, and still within striking distance, not mathematically eliminated yet.
Yeah, it would take a miracle for the Buffalo Sabres, Boston Bruins, and the Philadelphia Flyers to actually make the playoffs, because the Flyers, they've already played 76 games already. Pittsburgh Penguins, they've played 75, but realistically, I think it's just a race between Montreal, the Rangers, the BJs, the Red Wings, and the Islanders, realistically, for that last spot. Because I think Ottawa, unless there's a major collapse, I think they solidified that first wild card spot, because I don't think they're going to catch up to Florida or Tampa in the Atlantic.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right about that. I mean, I think actually, if I had to make my pick right now, I think at least in the Eastern Conference, I think it's going to wind up where it is right now. I think Ottawa and Montreal will get in. I'm not sure if the Rangers have the horses. Interestingly enough, a team that I've been watching has been the New York Islanders. And very interestingly enough, and unfortunately, this is going to have to be a topic for another show, but one of the signings that Lou Lamoriello made that has really surprisingly turned out to be great for the Islanders has been the addition of Tony DeAngelo, who has had some issues in some other spots, other places, Carolina, Philadelphia, the Rangers. But he has really been supposedly a model citizen on Long Island, and he has really contributed to their resurgence. So that's kind of an interesting story right there.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, he was on a collision course with Lou Lamoriello. And he was at DeAngelo was kind of at that crossroads of his career right now. I mean, what he did way back when was very immature with that burner account on Twitter, amongst other things. But people change over time. And he decided to change and change for the better. And if he did, good on him. He took an opportunity, and, you can't really get away with things with Lou Lamoriello because if you're going to pull some shenanigans, Bruce, you're on the way out.
Yeah, I think so. I think he realized that this was probably his last opportunity to play in the NHL. He was over in the KHL, but, listen, Lou has had that reputation for being able to straighten people out, and by all accounts, I was reading an article yesterday that even the people that doubted him are really saying that he has really been a good addition to the Islanders. And I don't know if they're going to get into playoffs, but I mean, no one has ever argued his ability, really. I mean, he's had some defensive issues, some lapses, but no one has ever argued his ability. He's put up some large amount of points in a couple seasons with the Rangers and Flyers and Hurricanes, but it's really just been the off-ice stuff. But that could potentially be a huge difference in the Islanders' season should they get in.
Yeah. So you're thinking that it's going to be Montreal and Ottawa?
I think so. I'm not sure that the Rangers have the horses to get in. There seems to still be some issues with them just putting a big streak together, because that's whoever gets into the wild card positions. I mean, I think Ottawa's pretty much entrenched there, but whoever gets into that second spot has really got to put in a winning streak at the end of the season. And if there is a team, like, for example, if you take a look over in the Western Conference, what the St. Louis Blues have done, they just ran off 8 in a row. If you have a team that does that, I mean, again, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, 7 teams, really, if you include the Canadians, that are all within striking distance, and you run off a 7 or 8 game winning streak. I mean, I don't think this is going to happen, but even the Flyers with 71 points. Let me just take a look here. They've got not that many games left, but still, if you put together a big winning streak, I mean, anything's possible. We've seen that.
The Blue Jackets is the dark horse here because they've played less games. They've only played 72 games, so they got 1 game in hand with Montreal. If you want to use Montreal as that last spot. It's all going to come down to tiebreakers. And if you look at the tiebreakers, the Rangers actually have 32 regulation wins. Montreal has 25. Columbus has only 23. So if you're talking about tiebreakers, that's huge for the New York Rangers. However, like you said, do they have enough to get themselves into the playoffs? If they go on a winning streak down the stretch, I can see them making the playoffs. Not catching up Ottawa, but I could see them making the playoffs.
I mean, there's so many things going on with some of these teams. I mean, after what happened in Columbus, I don't think a lot of people expected them to have the season that they're having, but they've played great. It would be such a feel-good story for them to slip in there. If you look at the Red Wings, I mean, a lot of people expected them to take a step this year. I mean, there was some criticism of Steve Yzerman for not adding more at the deadline, and so again, you're right. We'll see. I mean, but my two picks right now are going to be Ottawa and Montreal. Martin St. Louis up in Montreal has done a great job with that team. They put together talk about winning streak. They put together a couple up there, and they're right now they're looking at being headed to the postseason, which good for them.
Yeah. Going to the Western Conference, my picks, I don't know. I have a soft spot, just like everybody else, with the Blue Jackets. So I'm going to say Ottawa and the Blue Jackets. Based on
I think those are good picks. And again, it's going to be wild to see how things wind up because, I mean, again, if we hop over to the Western Conference, everybody had written off the St. Louis Blues as just dead, and then they've run off a couple of winning streaks. I mean, Sam, in their last 10 games, they're 9-1. They've got 9 wins in a row.
Well,
I mean, wow.
Wasn't that coaching change a brilliant move when it happened? And look at the Boston Bruins right now.
Well, look at it this way. This is something I was reading this morning, and I want to give somebody credit, although I can't remember who wrote the article right now. But, someone was saying that, the coach of the St. Louis Blues could be one of the first, I think it would be the only coach in history to be fired and potentially win the Coach of the Year in the same season.
Really?
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting pick. That'd be an interesting pick. I mean, if you're the I believe it's the AP that picks. I forgot who picks. The Hockey Writers Association.
I think it's the Hockey Writers.
Yeah. Yeah, because who else would fit? But you also got Columbus if they make the playoffs, because that team, was decimated, just with everything that's happened. Wow. Jim Montgomery. That's a good way to get revenge.
Well, I mean, look, look at what happened previously when they did that with oh my goodness, I can't remember his name right now, but the coach of the Vegas Golden Knights,
Bruce Cassidy.
They got rid of Bruce. Thank you, Bruce Cassidy. He gets fired and he goes to win the Stanley Cup with the Bruins, with the Golden Knights. And so then you have potentially this happening. I don't know. I just don't think this is a good look for the Bruins. I think actually, I think that organization has got some more issues than a lot of folks know about. Because I don't know if you thought this. Because unfortunately, and we should just let people know that we've both had some health stuff going on in the last couple of weeks. So this is the first podcast, unfortunately, that we've been able to do in 2 weeks because of logistics and stuff like that. But in his first game with the Florida Panthers, Brad Marchand sets up the overtime winner. And can you imagine? So first of all, you've got that going on with Jim Montgomery in St. Louis. Imagine he does something amazing. And then can you imagine if Marchand goes off and scores, 25 points in the playoffs and the Panthers, win it again and Marchand is the key cog in that? I just don't think it's a good look for Boston. I think that they're close to needing a house cleaning in that organization up top.
Yeah, I would agree. And you can't. Bennington, ever since that Four Nations win, he's just been on a roll. He's just been hot.
Yeah, and it's amazing the impact that a coach can have on a franchise. Look at Carberry with the Capitals. Nobody expected the Capitals have the best record in the league. They're let me just see here. They're 47-17-9. Nobody expected that. They've had a hell of a year too, and so you can't really underestimate the impact. People say that the players have to do it, and that's true. They do have to do it on the ice. But what a difference that can make. And so while it's great for the coach and the players, I think that if either of those things happen, I really do think the Bruins have some that that's probably a topic for another show, but I think they have some bigger issues than this season.
Yeah. Well, speaking of coaches, John Tortorella got fired about a week ago. Where do you think he's going to end up?
Well, before we get to that, I just realized I forgot to tell you who I thought was going to make the playoffs in the Western Conference.
Sorry about that.
And I apologize for that. No, that's on me. So Minnesota right now is in the first spot with 88 points. St. Louis is in the second spot with 87. You do have a couple of teams within striking distance. You've got Calgary with 82 points, Vancouver with 81, and then Utah with 78. But I'm going to go with Minnesota and St. Louis.
Yeah. Although they did drop 2 to the New Jersey Devils, Minnesota. I'm gonna pull a stunner here. I think Calgary gets in.
Well, you've got your soft spot for the Blue Jackets. I have always been a big Calgary Flames fan, and I would love to see that. There's a 5-point difference between Calgary and St. Louis. I'm just not sure. Although Calgary does have 2 games in hand on both St. Louis and Minnesota, so you could very well be right. So good picks, though.
Yeah. So, all right. Moving along. John Tortorella. Where do you think he's going to end up?
I think he's got one of 3 places that I've heard that there's interest. The big one has been Boston. That's been rolling around New England for the past few days. I've also heard potentially the Rangers, a reunion there. And believe it or not, maybe even Vancouver. But to me, because Tortorella is from Massachusetts, I think that he's going to wind up in Boston. And that, Sam, is also that assumes that he wants to get back into coaching. There's been some speculation that maybe he joins like the media for a little while and see if he wants to get back into that, because he is pretty colorful as a commentator. He's got a lot of experience. But I don't think he's got the coaching bug out of him yet. But again, for the Bruins, to get back to them for a second, this is a really important hire. I think they've got to hit a home run with this for the brass of the Bruins. I think whoever it is has got to be someone that's going to turn some stuff around. So if you're putting me on the spot right here, I think he's going to wind up with the Bruins, but it would not surprise me if he wound up with the Rangers again.
Yeah, it could happen. I'm just going to throw in Nashville.
Yeah, another good choice. I mean, Andrew Burnett definitely on the hot seat there. Definitely did not meet expectations. And for the first time today, Sam, when I was talking to some of my friends that I talked to for this show, I was told with really no uncertain words that there is really nobody in that organization that is 100% untouchable. And that includes Steven Stamkos, which Barry Trotz had not really been, talking about at all. But I was told today that they mean business. So, I mean, imagine that were to happen. I mean, he'd have to approve it because I do believe he's got trade protection. But, I mean, something's got to happen there, too, because that's a huge disappointment for that team. They had very high expectations this year.
Yeah, and they probably want results now, and you're going to get that with Tortorella if he starts coaching that team.
That's a good point, Sam. That's a good call on your part. Good choice.
Thanks. Ovi, 890 goals as of today. Approaching Gretzky's goal-scoring record. What are your thoughts?
I think it's an incredible accomplishment. And as I've said before on our show, the thing that I find hard to believe, like if you think about, these are 2 players, goal scorers that played in different eras. And I always thought, Gretzky had so many more points and it was so different then. But if you look at the pure goals, they did it in essentially the same time period. And the thing with Ovi, you had a couple of work stoppages in there as well. So if you, I mean, Wayne Gretzky is Wayne Gretzky. He's, probably the greatest player ever. But I mean, if you talk about, purely goal scoring, because Gretzky also had a huge amount of assists. Ovi doesn't have as many assists as he did. So Gretzky was just everything. But in terms of just the goal scoring, I mean, I think it's exciting, and I'm curious to see after he breaks the record how much longer he's going to play.
Yeah, I mean, if Ovechkin didn't have the work stoppages, because his first full year would have been that 2004-5 season that never was, because he was drafted in 2004 as the first overall pick, was not able to play NHL hockey. So you can easily add 50 goals to his record right now had that season been played. Because his rookie year, he had over 50 goals, Alexander Ovechkin. So let's just make that assumption. So he would have right now 940 goals had they played that season. Now, I'll take you even further. You have the work stoppage after 2012. They went to 48 games in 2013 because of the lockout. So there was lost games there to no fault of Ovi. Obviously, COVID had a lot of impact, on Ovechkin. I think he could be around 965, 970 goals right now, had they not had any of those work stoppages.
And then I think that it's just common sense. I think anybody would say that he's going to try to get 1,000, and he very well still may try to get 1,000. I mean, he's still playing at a very high level. I mean, he's 39 years old. He's got 37 goals this year in 57 games. He missed a bunch of games, and he's still lighting it up. So, I mean, if he can, even as a supporting role, I mean, if he could stick around for, another 2 or 3 years, if he wants to, I mean, I even at 40 years old, I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument, I don't know if he's going to score 10 goals with how many games they have left, but let's say he gets to, let's say he does. If he gets to 900, I mean, the last couple of years, if you throw COVID in there, right, so going back to 2019, Sam, I'm going 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 here, 48, 24, 50, 42, 31, 37. And that's in his late 30s, right? So the guy keeps himself in phenomenal shape. There's really no reason that if he wanted to, he couldn't play another 3 years and get to 1,000.
Now, if you want to compare Gretzky and Ovechkin, two different eras, no doubt Ovechkin could have played in Gretzky's era. But I think Ovechkin benefited from the new NHL, which was the coined term at the time, when they took out the red line. When they took out the red line, they opened up the ice quite a bit. If you remember, wow, I can't believe, over 20 years ago, they changed the rules. The trapezoid behind the net, they took out the red line. The clutching and grabbing stopped, and it was a young man's game. It was a lot faster, and it was more emphasis on skill than brawn. I think Ovechkin could have played in both eras, but I don't think his. Maybe that's not true, but I don't think he would have had as many goals maybe had he played in Gretzky's era, because if you think about it, yeah, the 80s were a lot of these players were getting a lot of points, but once you got into the early 90s and throughout the 90s, the clutching and grabbing, the hits, the physicality just got more brutal, and who knows how he would have played.
Yeah, well, it's funny getting back to the assists. I mean, Gretzky had 1,963 assists. That's more than Ovi has in points. But I mean, you're talking about strictly goals, and he's not that far away. So it's going to be, and I guess he's 4 away now. I thought it was 5, but 890 goals. Gretzky had 894.
Yeah, so it's 5 to break the record.
5 to break the record, right, Mike? Listen, I'm lucky I can dress myself. Never mind add.
So I think
Huge story,
I think he'll do it. I think he'll break the record this season in the regular season. But I think maybe on the last day of the season, he might shock you with 900, which would put the cherry on the top.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think he's going to play to get to 1,000? You think that's on his radar?
I don't think he will play to get to 1,000. I think he would play because he loves to play.
No, and I think you're right. I mean, I think
as a result, he may get to 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a heck of an accomplishment. I mean, what he's doing now is a heck of an accomplishment with, at that level. I mean, he's not a young man anymore.
He's still playing with enthusiasm, so I can't imagine him not wanting to stop. I mean, look what happened to Tom Brady. He was on the top of the world at age 40, and he extended it as long as he could, at a very high level.
Well, things didn't end well with Giselle, though, because of that.
I'm trying to keep it positive here, Bruce.
Hey, listen. What's funny? Listen, I'm gonna go on a little football tangent here, and I'm not a big football guy, Sam. I'm not. I'm a hockey guy, right?
Yep.
But you know what I find funny about the whole Tom Brady thing? I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a really big Patriots fan, and he actually came up with this reasoning. This is not my thoughts. This is his. So in that relationship, they said or what's out there is that he was like the perfect father, the perfect husband. He just made her mad because he unretired again and made $40 million or whatever he made, and now he's retired. He's doing the announcing thing, and so just don't you think that's kind of weird? For like, all right, yeah. I mean, listen, my wife is mad at me all the time for different things too. But like, if you've got all those qualities and you make your mad. I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess I'm not in that financial area, so I don't understand how someone could do that. But hey,
look, if you've worked hard all your life and you're on top, you want to make sure that your legacy is fulfilled by giving it everything you've got. And Tom Brady did not have a limit in his head because he was the greatest of all time for pushing the boundaries and expanding his comfort zone. When you hear his story of how, look, when he got to Michigan, what was he on, 5th on the depth chart of quarterbacks? And Drew Henson was like the star quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
So, but he was always, and I remember watching a motivational video of Tom Brady that, you just appreciate everything you got. So he was 5th of the depth chart. He only got 4 snaps. Well, make it the best 4 snaps in practice that you got. So every time he rushed in the huddle, he made it count. And then suddenly 4 snaps becomes 8 snaps. And then people start noticing this guy's into it. This guy's working hard. So, and I think Ovechkin has got that mentality. And part of me thinks that he wants to represent his country in a positive manner. I'm not getting into politics here, but I think he wants to represent his country as being a good thing, being Russian and the leading NHL scorer of all time in goals. And, that's a legacy that I think anybody would be proud of, to represent their country like that. And to be able to take that record and go 100. I mean, look at Marty Brodeur when he did the 552 and beat Patrick Waugh's record. He almost, I mean, he's in the same boat with Ovechkin with the work stoppages. Marty Brodeur could have had easily about 800 wins. You know,
maybe more, more.
And probably, I wish there was a stat of how many shutouts Brodeur blew in the last 5 minutes of the third period. I think he could have honestly had 175 shutouts. You know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that level of greatness doesn't come along that often, and it just makes what they've done, Ovechkin and Brodeur, it just makes it that more amazing to me, because in terms of, Ovechkin and Gretzky, two different eras, but both, results. I mean, and that's a record that may not be broken again, or may not be broken. And I don't think anybody's going to break Brodeur's record unless you have some hotshot goalie, because teams are not playing their number one. They're not playing them 70 games a year anymore, not because they can't, but because
it would take a major rule change. It'll take a major rule change in a specific era, to do that. That's what I think.
I just don't see with the goaltenders. I don't see that happening. Not because they can't, but because with the salary cap going up to where it is, and you look at a goaltender like Shesterkin or Hellebuck or any of the great goaltenders. There's so much money tied up in them now. You can't afford to have them get hurt at that dollar level.
But just remember, Brodeur played in 3 different decades.
Yeah.
With the early 90s, when he was a rookie, with all the work stoppages came different collective bargaining agreements and different rules and all that. He survived and thrived in each era, which is remarkable. And in the new NHL, when they put that trapezoid behind the net, he went out a few years later and broke Bernie Parent's record for the most wins in the season. Like, that's incredible. Who knows if what he could have done, in his prime, had they not changed all those rules.
Well, not only is he a generational talent, the reason that I happen to think and I believe that he's the greatest goaltender ever is because they changed rules because of him. He mastered the system that Jacques Lemaire put in, but also, and this is a big one to me, Sam, we don't really talk about this a lot, he was almost never hurt. He was such a durable goalie. He never got hurt. I mean, if you look at, and just, obviously a topic for a different show, but how different could the Devils franchise history be if you have, heaven forbid, in one of those seasons, even the ones where they lost the Stanley Cup Finals, they may not have even gotten there had he had, a knee injury or something in the middle of the season. He was almost never hurt.
Kind of like Tom Brady, and his durability had a lot to do with his innovative style of being a hybrid goaltender. 70% stand-up and 30% in the butterfly. It saves a lot of wear and tear on your hips, your knees, and he wasn't a pure butterfly goaltender. And he learned from Tretiak, as well. And he had good people around him, even at a young age, which he almost quit hockey, or at one point when he was younger. But he stuck with it, especially with the goalie position. All right, let's talk some current Devils right now before we close. Devils right now surging in the last 2 games, sweeping the home and home with the Minnesota Wild. They're without Jack Hughes. They're without Jonas Siegenthaler. They're without Dougie Hamilton. But even then, Bruce, Devils are finding ways to win. They're looking pretty decent in the last 5 games, with the exception of the game against the Winnipeg Jets. What are you expecting them to do in the playoffs? Because to me, when you have a team that's coming together, I value team chemistry and timing over talent in the playoffs. Right now, you're seeing the Devils gelling right now, and are they looking pretty good last 2 games.
Yeah, they've looked terrific against Minnesota, and they have been playing better. So in terms of what I expect them to do in the playoffs, I think the important thing is that they are coming together at the right time. You want to be playing, your best hockey going into the playoffs, and they've been playing a lot better. And, the thing is, Sam, is all you've got to do is get into the dance, and then anything can happen. It doesn't matter if you win 16 games 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, 9-8. You just got to win those games. So they have been finding ways to win. They've had people stepping up that have done some great things. Their goaltending has been a lot better. I think as to what they're going to do in the playoffs, I think it really depends to me on where they finish. Because I will say this: there's some teams that I do not want New Jersey to play in the first round. And again,
they're a lock with Carolina. It's not going to change.
So it is Carolina. So they're going to wind up playing Carolina.
Probably about 95% chance.
Okay, well, again, if that turns out to be that's going to be an interesting matchup, and we'll have to see what happens. I think it's going to depend where they wind up. I mean, I don't want to go anywhere near Washington in the first round. I mean, I know they're not going to play them, but that's not a team I would want to meet really early.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to meet in the first round. Washington will probably play either the Blue Jackets or the Montreal Canadiens and or New York Rangers, if you want to put that, put them in the mix. Ottawa. Yeah, and Ottawa would play the
the 2 seed, right?
Yeah, who's the first in the Atlantic?
So right now, in the Atlantic, let me see here. In the Atlantic, it's Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, Ottawa, Montreal.
Okay,
and
sorry, I got it mixed up. Yeah, so Toronto would play Ottawa. If is Toronto in first place right now? Sorry, your mic dropped.
Toronto in there is first in the Atlantic Division. They've got 94 points. Yeah.
Okay, so Toronto would play Ottawa, which would be a heck of a Canadian matchup. And then Tampa, Florida, the Florida series in the first round. That's going to be some good hockey.
Yeah, so I was just figuring this out while you were talking. So right now, this is just today. This is not how it's going to stay. But right now, if it ended today, it would be Washington, Montreal, Carolina, Ottawa, Toronto.
It wouldn't be Carolina, Ottawa. It'd be Carolina Devils.
Carolina and Toronto both have 94 points.
Right.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Yep.
Sorry.
So that's going to be a heck of a matchup.
Yeah.
That's going to be a heck. I mean, Carolina and Devils, I mean, that rivalry has been going on for years. Going on since the Scott Stevens, Shane Willis hit, those days, redneck hockey, when they moved from Hartford to Raleigh.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be. I mean, again, and if you have a Florida, early round playoff series, that's going to be a war of attrition. That one right there.
Yeah. Now, it would be interesting if the Rangers did get in, and they play the Capitals.
Well, I mean, again, anything goes once you get into the big dance. I mean, you get a key injury or something like that, and that's why. That's why I think all you've got to do is get in, and anything is really possible. I don't really know what this team's ceiling is because they've I think all season we've talked about this. They've had stretches where they've looked really good, and they've had stretches where they've looked not so good. And what you don't want to have happen is, I mean, I'm being completely candid here, speaking as an analyst, not as a fan. I didn't think New Jersey had any chance to win that Winnipeg game the other night. I didn't even think that was going to be close, and that 4-0, that was a lot the score made it look a lot closer than it actually was.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to have a couple of games against your playoff opponent like that. But then, then again, they come back and everybody contributes in the 2 wins against Minnesota. So, I mean, it could be really interesting. And who knows who you get back? Crazy things happening in the NHL. I mean, look at the Vegas Golden Knights. All of a sudden, players just happen to appear.
Yep.
Coming off LTIR. Magic.
I love how these teams cheat and they always get away with it. All right, Bruce. Well, we're going to get out of here. We're going to try to do this again on Thursday. Devils off till Saturday before they take on the New York Rangers at the Rock. 12:30 p.m. Eastern start. So there's going to be beer for breakfast at American Whiskey, 51 Edison Place, across the street from Prudential Center. Shorts Guy and I will be there. Also, Shorts Guy is going to be playing a pickup game of some sort inside the Prudential Center after that game. He's on Team White. Colin White is coaching that team. And I think Danico is going to be there. I think Bryce Salvador is going to be there. So it should be a very interesting time on Saturday. But we'll be at American Whiskey for Game Day Live and Devils After Dark. Or will Devils After Dark be inside the arena when we recap the game that was? We'll let you know. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Let's Go Devils. But yeah, that's it. That's it, Bruce.
It's good to be back with you, Sam, and hopefully both of us have our health issues, our pollen issues behind us, and going to get back on a regular schedule. Go Devils!
Yep, exactly. All right, dropping the podcast at midnight. Till next time, let's go Devils.